We'll start with military.
Okay.
Because being in the military for a few decades, pretty interesting.
Okay.
Did you go in enlisted? How'd you start?
Yeah. I actually went in the Air Force 4 days after I graduated. Had no desire to go to college. Never taken the SATs, never taken the ACTs.
So you were just not about it.
I just didn't want to go to school.
Were your parents in the military?
No. Well, my dad was probably 3 years Marine.
Okay. Yeah.
And then he got out fairly quickly.
I see.
But I didn't take any college-bound classes. My highest grade or my highest class was pre-algebra.
Nice.
And then I took foods. I took all every foods.
Yeah.
Took every foods course. And then I got into I was the first guy to ever take aerobics. So I just didn't care.
Sure.
And so I went in the military and active duty for almost 6 years, and then I got to travel around. Grew up, just learned a new way of doing things, and just gave me that discipline to better myself. And
the Air Force too, correct me if I'm wrong, but they really move you around. You can really see the world.
You can, you definitely can. I had my first deployment in the Air Force, and that was to Somalia right before Black Hawk Down.
Wow.
So that was, I'm dating myself a little bit, 93.
Holy smokes.
So that was that was probably the scariest place I'd been.
Yeah. Yeah. So just right into the thick of things, huh?
Oh yeah. It was just, that's when I realized I was in the military for the college money.
Sure. Yeah. What were you doing originally in the military?
So I was in logistics, mostly just moving items from place to place, different supply chain stuff.
Because that's the lesser appreciated side of the Air Force, but probably the bigger side of the Air Force is just moving stuff around.
Yeah. And it's mostly support.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the Air Force is that the Air Force is the only service that really sends their officers to fight war.
Uh-huh.
So everyone else supports that mission. Whereas Army, infantry, Marines, infantry, they're all combat. Navy is a lot infantry, or not really infantry, but they're a lot more support as well, but they still have a lot of people that go on the ground. Their main mission is to shuttle around the Marines, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah. And move supplies too.
Most definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we support, obviously, with our airlift, the Air Force supports a lot of the overall supply and troop movements.
Well, some of those planes, you'll see them every once in a while. I mean, I don't see them all that often, but you'll see like a C-5.
Yeah, big.
It's big.
They look like they barely move. It's just like, but they're just beasts.
Yeah, or the C-17s. It's just like, that's a big plane.
Yeah.
That is no joke. And it's
huge.
Just empty. So you can put whatever you want inside of it.
Definitely.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Helicopters, like, you want a Chinook over here? Sure. We'll just throw it in the airplane. Fly it over there.
Exactly right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. And
big
then
dollars.
You saved up the, what is it, GI Bill money, or how does that?
Yeah. I mean, I did GI Bill. I got out, went to the National Guard. I went to the Air Force National Guard. That's where I became a medic at the time. And then I went to flight medic school. I started school, but with me not having taken the pre-SAT, they had this transitional phase where they wanted older people like 23 to 28 to go to college. So they kind of waived the SAT requirement.
I see.
But you had to do a placement exam, and my placement exam was very, very poor.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where I really had to take, like, for my math, I had to take 3 classes before I could take one that actually counted, So I struggled through that and finally learned it. And, it took me, a long time to finish my bachelor's. But once I did, it was like, let's go,
The college requirement for being an officer in the military, I feel, is antiquated nowadays.
Sure. Yeah.
I think it's like that's how it used to be, but why does that have any bearing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, even now, a lot of the senior enlisted people have master's degrees and even doctorates, and they don't flip over to.
Because then they'd have to go back down?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I was an E7 select before I became an officer, so I had to go from an E7 to an O1, it was a real.
You start over, essentially.
Yeah, it was a real different way of doing things.
Yeah.
I remember when I went to my officer basic course after having 15 years in the Air Force already.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'd already been 15 years in the military, so I had multiple deployments, and here I am going back to an O1 starting over with these people that are coming right out of college.
Sure.
But then also because I went to a medical officer training, it's kind of like more like a gentleman's officer training. It was more so something that I found myself looking at these people that were surgeons and things that have come in after they've retired. They're automatically coming in as a lieutenant colonel or a forward colonel or a major that don't even know how to put their name tags on.
Really? Because they have the medical experience.
Yeah. So because they do that, especially during war. They want these seasoned, trained surgeons that come in and go to war and help our guys. So
no kidding.
And yeah, just really interesting. So I'm going through officer basic with these guys, and they, because of their rank, they're put in these command positions. And me as the 15-year enlisted, senior guy, I just was quiet. I didn't try to boss anyone around. I just kind of laid back in the background, act like I didn't know anything. And it was really interesting because I made some pretty good relationships with some of these docs, and I would kind of have to go when I would be out in formation. It would be something where I would have to change their name badge around because they got them on wrong, or one of them even had it on upside down, and it's not their thing. It's just all new to them, and they're in their 50s, some of them 60s.
Good for them, though. I mean, that requires great. Some balls to say.
Most definitely. Yeah. And the sacrifice. But I mean, what a cool thing it would be to be able to, work your whole life and do great things in your profession or your field, in the civilian world, and then say, you know what, I'm going to give back.
Yeah.
I'm going to give back. I'm going to do this stuff, and we're going to crush it. And really cool. Really, really cool.
How'd you get into the medical track to begin with?
It was kind of selfish. I was in logistics initially, and I remember so I went from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California.
Yeah.
Then I went to Osan Air Base in Korea.
Okay.
When I was 19, 20.
Wow.
21-ish. I turned 21 in Korea. Then I came and I went to Tampa, Florida, to MacDill Air Force Base, the command center for Southern Operations Command, Air Special Operations Command. And, I got down there, and I remember they had a large hospital down there, and I was like, man, those hospital guys are just cool. They just seem really cool. They seem like they've got a really great job. And Air Force does pretty good about having jobs that transition into civilian jobs. Mm-hmm. And so when I got out of active duty, I transitioned to a National Guard unit up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm from Indiana. And I applied for a medic position. And so I did that primarily, almost selfishly, just because I wanted to have skills that would really transition over. I didn't really know anything about medicine at the time. And then I just fell in love with medicine. Like, I just loved of course I got my EMT and my medic license, and it just made sense to me.
Isn't it funny though that like a lot of core life decisions that young men make are because it's like cool.
Oh,
like, that would be pretty cool. And it's just as simple as that.
Yeah. Funny, when I first went into the military, I enlisted when I was a junior in high school.
Yeah.
So I had this delayed enlistment for that whole year. And all I wanted to do is a military police officer because I just wanted to be cool.
Yeah. It's just cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when I went into the military, so I go all year and just waiting to go into the military. I graduate high school. 4 days after I get out of high school, I go to MEPS for my physical. Hadn't had any physical since then, before that. So I go to MEPS, and then I go to basic training. And so this is where I get my job. And so you have kind of a wish list of 5 jobs that you can get. And I go through this physical exam process, and it was really kind of crazy because it's really fast. Like, it's really high speed. If you don't pay attention, you miss something. And I didn't pay attention to one of the visual exams. And it showed that I didn't have depth perception, which I'm like, come on, I didn't, wait. And they're like, nope, go on. So I didn't get to become a military police officer. And I got recycled into a different job, which was kind of crazy. But now that I see what I do now, I see the whole plan of how that all helped me. Yeah. But at the time, I was devastated because all I wanted to do is a police officer. Now I'm going to have to spend the next 6 years in a career that I just didn't want to do.
Yeah, But that's a good lesson, though. Hey, you didn't pay attention?
Oh, man.
Sorry. That's your problem, not ours.
It's only hindsight that I see the value of that. During the time, I was pissed as hell. Man.
Oh, I'm
there was
sure.
just nothing that was going to give me any peace about that at all.
I see. So then you're in this officer program.
Yeah, so I go into the National Guard. I spend, the next 6 years, almost 8 or 9 years in the National Guard, medic, back and forth. I kind of transitioned back and forth to the Army because I wanted to be a flight medic, so I was a helicopter medic for a while.
What are you doing as your job in these years?
So I worked in a trauma center.
Okay.
I worked on an ambulance. There was a stint where I was a pastor, where I worked only in outreach, which was kind of cool.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was really neat.
Huh.
But then I just kind of fell back in love with medicine. Like, this is what I want to do. So I decided to really take my school serious. I really buckled down. I had to take several classes over because I didn't do good enough to get grades. And then I applied to PA schools and medical schools, and I got accepted to both. But I just chose to be a PA because I'm a little older. I'm 35, 36, and I'm just like, I don't want to spend the next 7 to 10 years of my life. Kids are young at the time. Like, my oldest son would have been 13 by the time I got done. And it was just really critical times of their life that I wanted to be a part of. So I chose to be a physician assistant, and it was probably one of the best things that I ever did. So during that time period of physician assistant, I came to Knoxville. That's when I moved to Knoxville, and I went to school at South College.
And PAs, it's the in between a doctor and a nurse, but you're really like a doer. Like, you're more in the weeds than a doctor is.
I don't know if I'd really say that. I would say that there's a lot of terms for PAs. Some call them mid-level providers. Very similar to nurse practitioners, just a different training basis.
Yeah.
Nurse practitioners are the advanced practice nurse model. PAs are more in the doctor model, the way they're educated and the way they're trained in their schooling. It more mimics medical school. And so, we're able to do about 95% of what most doctors can do. We can't do our primary surgery. We can have our own clinics.
Yeah.
We work right alongside with them. Currently, we collaborate with them to, diagnose, treat, and even prescribe medications. There's very little that we can't do. Really important in rural healthcare. As more and more hospitals are closing, I think more mid-levels or nurse practitioner PAs are real critical in providing the care to those rural areas.
Well, and especially as the population's aging substantially, like, there's more and more, I think by 2034 estimated that people over the age of 65 are going to outnumber kids under the age of 18 for the first time in U.S. history. Yeah. Which is crazy.
Yeah. And I think with the current climate in medicine, more and more people are getting out of medicine. So there's a little bit more of a crisis for care.
And speaking a little openly here, I think medicine kind of did that to themselves in a way with the past few years. They did themselves no favors whatsoever. Like, I have never mistrusted modern medicine more than I do today.
It's tough.
Yes. And it's like, how are you going to rebuild that? Because that is a hell of a hole that you're in right now. Yeah. And I'm just saying, not you, but modern medicine. No,
seriously. Yeah, completely. And even through COVID, it was such a tax on people. The amount of time, the pain, the things that they saw, the trauma that they experienced throughout COVID, and just the demands and the requirements and restrictions. It was just really, really tough on healthcare practitioners.
Yeah. Oh, unbelievable.
So tough.
Yeah. And I don't blame them for leaving. It's like, I probably would have done that too if I were in their position.
Sure.
Because it was wild that they had to put up with in all different ways. Mm-hmm. Going back to the only experience I've had with an Air Force doctor is I really wish I remembered my path a little bit better, but I just had this chronic back pain when I was in high school, just brutal back pain.
Sure.
And it just got to a point where I was like, I was on probably like 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams ibuprofen a day.
That's a lot, yeah.
Which is not very good for a kid, and it's not very good for your kidneys.
Sure.
And so it just got to a point where it's like, this is too unbearable, and you're in class all day, so it's not like you can just get up and walk around whenever you want and stretch.
Sure. Yeah.
Like you have to conform, or else you don't.
And sittings. horrible for low back pain.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Sitting's the worst thing for it.
Sure.
And so we had to do something, and then we go to the insurance companies, and they basically say, or the doctors, and they say, well, we can just indefinitely get you prescription for painkillers, because that's what the insurance companies would prefer. Honestly,
Sure.
They would just, because that's cheaper for them. They can just kick the can down the road, and then cool, your liver gives out. We'll figure that out down the road.
Yeah.
And they don't say it like that, but we're not going to solve the core problem
Sure.
if we can avoid it, because that's expensive for us. So I go then to a bunch of specialists, and then we start to explore, all right, what the heck is actually going on? And I go get an MRI, and it turns out, and all these tests, it turns out that I just have this disc that's just like gone. I remember looking at the scan, and like a nice healthy disc is like a bright white. And then there was just nothing really there. And it's just like, and I don't know what happened. No idea. And so then we started to get into, well, let's try an epidural. Let's try a few epidurals. Let's see if we can do something. Let's try years of physical therapy. And then that still didn't work. So then your options traditionally become fusion, but then because of my age, replacement was then brought up as the better option. But this was a decade ago.
And you're young.
I'm 18 at the time.
Very young.
I'm 18. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so replacement enters the chat, and then we have to find a surgeon that'll do this.
Yeah, for someone your age.
For someone my age, and it's still a newer thing a decade ago, a full disc replacement.
Yeah.
So we find this guy in Scottsdale, and his name is Dr. Dwayne Pitt, and this guy is a military flight surgeon.
Okay.
And colonel in the Air Force.
Sure.
And you could tell he was a colonel in the Air Force, because he was the most unpersonal doctor, medical professional I have ever dealt with.
Yeah.
He just comes in. It's right to the point. Here's exactly what's going to happen. You have any questions? No? Okay.
See ya.
I mean, like, brutal efficiency.
Yeah.
No wasted motions, no wasted time, no wasted words. What's going on? We're going to get right into it. A brilliant doctor.
Yeah.
Unbelievable what he did, but it was just very matter of fact.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the whole process, I was with this guy that was just like, this is business. This is nothing more than business. We're just carrying out the mission. And
at the time, I'm sure that seemed very heartless.
Yeah, but at the same time, I didn't really know what was going on. And so even like, I remember I went in for the surgery, and we did it at a private hospital because we paid for it because the insurance company wouldn't pay for it.
I see.
So we did a private hospital, and this is just a way tangent. But morning, I'm like in a gown waiting to go into the OR, and he's like, "Hey, just so you're aware, this is what the plan is, but there is a small chance that the disc we have isn't going to fit, so we're going to have to try some others, and if those don't fit, we're going to have to fuse it, but that's, very slim chances. I don't expect that to happen."
Disc of a small goat.
Yes, yeah, and it's like
something crazy.
It's like before I go in, I'm like, hey, wait a second, like just so matter of fact, but then I get it, no problem. I was walking 2 hours after surgery.
Sweet.
With a different artificial disc in my back.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So,
super.
That's
great.
the only time I've ever dealt with anybody, Air Force medicine.
Yeah.
Just that guy.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy because medicine's changed so much. I think for me, it really changed. This isn't, I don't have any druthers when it comes to politics in this, but it really changed during the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare.
Yes.
Really changed significantly. So at the time, I owned a family practice, and we had about 5,000, 6,000 patients, and
where's this, in Fort Wayne?
It was in Knoxville.
Knoxville.
Yeah, so I came down here in 2007. I haven't moved since then, Knoxville.
I got you.
And so I remember, it was so tough because I remember in November of 2014, I had probably 100 of my elderly patients that just got letters that said, "Here's your new primary care."
Mm-hmm.
And they would call that primary care, and they would say, "We're not taking new patients."
Mm.
And so I ended up seeing those patients for free because I couldn't bill their insurance because I was no longer there, but they had to have care. So I would continue to see them for free. But what I saw is that because they came out with these new guidelines for dictating or documenting medicine, 15 points of meaningful use, and all these things you had to have. It just took so much more time. And then computers came into the play, and it became something where instead of seeing 3 patients an hour, you'd have to see 5 patients an hour to make the same amount of money.
I see. Yep.
And then 50% of your time was on a computer. So if I said 5 patients an hour, 11 minutes per patient, 50% of that time is on the computer. 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes of my time.
Well, and I think this was the most fascinating thing, and I'm glad I told that story because now I can refer to this, is I remember watching this guy. This is a spine surgeon.
Sure.
Doing a very sophisticated kind of surgery in in a time where very few people in the world were doing this.
Yeah.
Military flight surgeon, colonel. Like this guy's best in class.
Sure.
When it comes to medicine.
Oh, definitely.
And I remember watching him argue with the insurance company and at the computer, on the phone, trying to argue with some jackwagon in some call center somewhere who could give a shit. Yeah. Give a
You're 18
single
years
shit.
old. There's no way this is important for you to get.
Exactly. They're just following the script. Sorry, my boss said XYZ. And you're watching this guy, I mean, like at the pinnacle of society, have to deal with such bullshit.
Yeah.
And that was when I really, like, is this really how it works?
Yeah.
This is madness.
Yeah.
What is going on here? And he's dealing with it. Everybody's dealing with it.
Most definitely.
But on an even worse scale.
Yeah. And I think every specialty, even primary care now is a specialty because we just don't do the same things we used to. But it's real. I feel like it's a real injustice. It's really made it very tough to enjoy medicine because you are under such strict guidelines of how you have to practice medicine. Sometimes it takes the humanity out of medicine. You know, I've got older people that are on 13 or 14 different medicines, and I've got to say, okay, 5 minutes, top 2 complaints.
Sure.
And it's just like, and I can just see it come out of them. And I got out of that model because of that, because it really affected me because I just didn't feel like the quality of my care was beneficial. And I think you see more and more doctors, especially older school doctors, that are more personable. Yeah. I think the younger people that are coming up, they just don't know any different.
Well, and it's not their fault. They're they're in this system that breeds that and beats it out of you. I mean, you go through an 8-year program minimum with med school. They can condition you however they need to over a course of 8 years, and you have to conform to the system, or else you don't get through the system. That's how it works. And lawyers are the same way. It's like, why do all you guys talk like this? Like this is not human communication. These aren't normal words. Where did these? How do you even talk like this? Like, oh yeah, you sat there for years and years and years. Sure. Having to talk like this, so no wonder you all talk like this.
And it's almost like its own language. Like I tell people I speak English and medicine.
Yeah,
it's in English and I'm a lawyer. It's like you learn these words and it's really hard to. I don't want to say dumb it down, but make it simple for people that don't understand that language to really understand.
But I think that's what separates great doctors, great lawyers.
Yeah.
They're able to bridge that gap.
Humanize it.
Yes, and operate at that level, but then come all the way back down. And here's exactly how, who's probably the best at it is pediatricians.
Most definitely. Yeah, they have to.
They have to take very complex things and boil them down to something a 5-year-old can understand.
Yeah, well, you're also, in pediatrics, you're not just treating the person, you're treating the parents.
Yes.
So you have to make it, parent is trusting you with their most prized possession and thing that they take care of. And it becomes something where it's like, now it's not only do you have to take care of the patient, which can't tell you. I think being a pediatrician is most like being a mechanic. The car can't tell you what's wrong. You have to be able to do the things that you need to do to diagnose it, because you just have to know that knock is this noise.
Yeah.
And now you have to explain it to the parent. Hey, this is what it is. And so
without
pediatricians are fantastic about that.
But to pull it in a more concrete direction here, how'd you get into the whole construction thing?
Oh man, that's kind of crazy.
Because we're not here to just talk about medicine.
Yeah. So
this is actually a construction related podcast.
Yeah, right. We can have side conversations about this other stuff.
Dude, I could talk about medicine for 12 hours.
I'm going to set up a clinic in one of your offices. And we're going to do full exams on everybody.
Please.
No, so interesting. The whole Obamacare thing actually got me into doing occupational medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So the reimbursements were so poor. So my accounts receivable went from $200,000 a year to $600,000 a year. And then on top of that, I had to. So that means that I can't, like, it's that hard to get money in. It's so backed up in the system.
Yeah.
$400,000 more behind than we were last year.
And who do you call?
Good luck.
Exactly.
Because everybody was trying to figure out how to even do this under this new system.
Yeah.
And insurance companies were just delaying. Like they would reject something for nothing. And so it got to a point where I just couldn't make money to where I could keep my clinic open. So what I did is I worked for free. I hired another PA to work full time. And then I started moonlighting at an occupational medicine clinic. And that's where I learned occupational medicine. And so I would work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the occupational medicine clinic in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I would work in my clinic. And Tuesday and Thursday, I'd flip-flop.
Wow.
And so I was working at my clinic for free, but I was making money at the other clinics. And I just really, I think I really got it. I really understood it. But I also fell in love with it because I felt like it was the type of medicine that really did good.
So what is occupational medicine?
So occupational medicine is there is a large definition for this, but ultimately it's in a nutshell, it's pre-employment physicals to make sure that you are hiring healthy people, managing work injuries, case management for complicated work injuries, putting people back to work after surgeries and things like that are non-work related.
Mm-hmm.
And then just consulting and working with safety teams and making sure that they are doing things in such a way that are not that don't put their employees at risk.
Sure.
Wellness programs, things like that. So all corporate executive medicine.
And so you start your moonlighting and then you start your own practice, occupational health.
Yeah. So I worked with this doctor for several years. And then we just had some disagreements on what we need to do. My clinic was, continuing to do poorly. So I shut that down. I went to more of a direct primary care model. And so that was kind of just on the side now. And I was doing more occupational medicine on the regular. And so then I decided to take the skills that I had learned. And then that's when I started working for Phillips and Jordan.
I see.
And I started on as their executive medical director full time.
So they're in Knoxville, based out of Knoxville.
Yes.
They work across the United States, but yeah, their headquarters is right up the road from you.
Yeah, they have their main headquarters is in Knoxville, and they have probably 7 or 8 regional offices.
So what does that look like? What are the mechanics of that? How does becoming the main medicine guy for a construction company?
I'll tell you what happens is that there are starting to become more and more of a need or a buzz for companies to have a higher level of people first care.
Mm-hmm.
And Phillips and Jordan is by far one of the best companies that I've seen do this.
Yeah. I just wish they'd let me on their job sites. Right. That's a different conversation.
Sure. Yeah. So, one of the things is just trying to really find a balance between the construction medicine or the medical construction infrastructure of how they integrate someone in medicine into the program. So I became full-time. I was on staff there. And what I really did was I worked heavily in the pre-employment process. So they would do pre-employment physicals. All the physicals came before me. We developed a standard based on Department of Labor guidelines. And we just kind of said, this is what our minimum standard is that someone has to meet in order to be employed.
And this is important, and I'm trying to kind of explain along the way. This is important because, especially in an occupation in which you're doing physical labor, you have had you have an ailment before you go to work for somewhere. So
something pre-existing.
Something pre-existing. Yeah. So you find out what's are they capable of doing the work they're signing up for? What's pre-existing so that we know the baseline.
Yeah.
And if anything happens future state, we can at least refer to that baseline.
Yeah. And you also have to be careful because there are ADA guidelines that we have to make exceptions for with people. And so knowing those balance. So we work really heavily with HR, work really heavily with safety. So pre-employment obviously is a big HR function.
Mm-hmm.
So you work really integrated with them. And then, I think the things that employers are starting to think about more is their experience modification rating. When you look at your mod rate, your safety rating is going to determine significantly on what you can bid on and what you cannot bid on.
Yes.
So when you have a company that's had I think most of the companies that come to me are companies that have gotten themselves into a pickle from a medical mod rate issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where case management comes in, really going in and investigating and reenacting the issue, looking at all the medical findings from imaging, past medical, visits, all the documentation, and trying to make a determination if this mechanism injury really did cause this injury or is it pre-existing.
Sure.
And so having someone on the medical team that I wouldn't necessarily say expert, but has a lot of experience in this, it allows you to have a level of, I don't want to say protection, but there is a level of protection which managing the mod rate, managing the OSHA log, and making sure that things are documented correctly, make sure the injuries are managed correctly, are critical to the overall mod rate.
I think all companies like to say that we're going to do the right thing regardless, because it's the right thing to do. But that's not how company behavior happens typically, is what I've seen. It's we're going to do something because it's good for business. And so what I say is, we're not killing people as much anymore on job sites because it's bad for business. And yes, we care, and it's not as cold and callous as that, but that's really why safety has become much better over the past few decades, is because killing people is bad for business.
It is very bad for business.
Yes.
It's bad for business.
And now hurting people is bad for business.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think what you've seen is companies like Phillips and Jordan, some of the companies that work, Strack, Wright Brothers, those guys
I was going to say, you're with Strack.
Yeah. So those guys are so of the mindset of really being ahead of the curve instead of being reactionary to an injury. They're being proactive. And so their proactive approach is, we're going to take care of this before this happens and try to manage all the things that we can so that we don't get to a place where we're always chasing our tail on the back end.
Yeah. And especially when you're chasing your tail, this is when lawyers get involved.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, it gets messy.
They can make a huge mess of it. Yes.
Yeah, and I think having a medical team on your staff, even so, to hire a medical director on staff is extremely expensive just to have them on staff.
Mm-hmm.
What we've developed a corporate medical directorship that is contracted.
Kind of like fractional.
Fractional. Very fractional. Yeah, it's very fractional compared to what you would pay someone if they were full-time only for you.
Yeah.
And so having that in place is so important because when you look at what it is that we actually do and how we help in all the different areas that we help, and we'll go into that here in a second. But once you see how much that has an impact on the overall, you see that much of the stuff that we do, because we're taking care of it before it happens, the bee stings, the rashes, the tick bites, the sprained ankles, the backs that don't ever go to the clinic.
Yes.
Those things are managed from a first aid standpoint by teletriage and recommendations that we give to our local people. And it keeps them from ever going to a clinic.
Yeah. And I don't blame people for not getting stuff taken care of because it's a pain in the ass to schedule appointments, and then you can't get time off work a lot of times, or it's going to cost you money and you can't afford to miss work today. Your employer's not paying you to go to typically. It's just a pain in the ass. So you're like, well, I'm just going to tough it out instead of deal with it. I totally get the logic. I've been there for sure.
Yeah, I think there's also this stigma that if they do get it taken care of, then they're going to be in trouble in some way with their supervisor. And sometimes the supervisor doesn't act appropriately to the people that get injured. They just
a lot of times.
We're not going to report this.
Yeah.
We're not going to put this up the chain. Just suck it up. Here, take some ibuprofen, And so when it's not managed correctly and it gets out of hand a week or two later and they're still doing the same things that they were always doing, now it's gotten much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a bigger issue, maybe recordable, even a lost time. So when we actually deal with things, we try to really document it early. We really try to take care of it early. So
this is the good side of trying to prevent recordables, because there's also the dark side to it. It's like, let's just sweep it under the rug. Sure. Just get it under the rug as far as we can get it. We do not want this to go in our paperwork to affect how we're doing things. You're essentially same goal. We don't want to have recordables, but it's not because we're sweeping it under the rug, because we're catching it early, or in theory before it happens, and then early, and then we're trying to take care of it before it comes any worse.
Most definitely. And I think what we've done is we've helped to create a new culture within our companies that we work with of early reporting, quick, even if it seems like it's something that's minimal. If we can get our thoughts on it, our mind on these situations initially, right when they happen, then we can bring the recommendations that are necessary from a first aid standpoint to really kind of help get it through. So 98% of all the calls that we get, we're able to keep at a first aid level. Yeah. Some of the things that we get, these big lacerations that need string, nothing you can do about that. A fracture, you just can't do anything about that. Yeah. So what we do is we manage the things that should be managed, but aren't being managed. And a lot of times when they go to these urgent cares and these ERs, these doctors don't care about the companies. Mm-hmm. And they don't feel like that. They don't feel like the companies are advocates for the employees. So that's why they give them time off. Mm-hmm. So you'll get a lost time environment. I had someone go in for a rash one time from a company that called me in duress. They're like, we need some help. So they went in for this rash that they had on their hands. The doctor gave him a prescription, which at the time, could have not been necessary.
Yeah, probably.
Then he gave him 5 days off. Well, put that on the mod. Put that in your mod rate. Put that on the OSHA log. That's going to greatly affect you. And so when you think about incidences like that, could easily be controlled on the front end. Not being controlled, being sent to a clinic, the clinician not knowing really how to handle it. The thing that we do is we want to make sure that the employees or the patients have the most necessary care.
Yeah.
We don't want it to be defensive medicine where they're just doing all these things because, but we want it to be the most necessary care based on the situation or the injury or incident that they have.
And doing stuff to basically, cover your ass.
Most definitely. And you'll see that a lot. And so when we contact an ER in any injury that comes in, and they go to an ER in urgent care, we call the doctors or the providers before they even get there. We develop a relationship with them and say, hey, we're the medical directors. We're going to be helping you through this. We want to collaborate with you. Please give us a call after you see our patient. And so what we do is say, hey, listen, I know you might be worried about this, but I'm going to be following it every day. So you don't have to worry about someone that's not a medical professional seeing if this gets worse or not, and then it's going to come back on you because you didn't give an antibiotic or something. But if you just give them first aid measures or whatever you feel like is necessary, we're going to watch it. And if it gets worse, we're going to bring it back to you because we want the best care for our employee.
And so using Strack as the example, because we love Strack here.
Yeah, Strack's great.
Yeah, big fans.
Definitely.
Get them some airtime. So I'm working at Strack and I twist my ankle. Mm-hmm. What do I do?
So we have a call center. I have a 24/7 call center, and they would tell that they sprained their ankle to their supervisor, and the supervisor knows to call the call center.
Sure.
One of our licensed medical directors, PAs or MDs, are going to answer the phone. It's not, and that's the difference is that it's not a nurse line. So a nurse line is something where they actually have a decision tree. So back pain, yes. Is it this? Yes. Is it this? No. Go to the clinic.
I see.
We can actually take pictures, do videos, make sure that we're talking with these people through FaceTime, and we're really doing a good triage on them, and we're doing what we feel like needs to be done. If it needs to go to the ER, we're going to send it to the ER. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't need to go to the ER and we want to see how it declares itself, maybe give it 24 hours and see how it does.
Yeah.
We'll ice it, elevate it, maybe do some over-the-counter ibuprofen,
Because
Tylenol.
like a sprained ankle, what's the ER going to do? Yeah,
No,
you
they're
sprained
not
your
going to
ankle.
do anything.
They can't do anything. Well, they can't do anything. Yeah, I mean,
they'll do an X-ray to make sure that there's no fracture. But if there's no fracture, there's just nothing they're going to do.
Yeah,
especially within a 24-hour period. Unless it's deformed. If it's deformed, then we're going straight to the ER.
Yeah,
So we don't want to ever compromise. We don't ever want to compromise patient care. We always want to give them the best, most necessary care, and that's where we have to be neutral. Like, we can't just be so company focused that we're only protecting the company. We can't be so patient focused that we're not protecting the patient or we're protecting the patient and not protecting the company.
Yeah.
So we have to be in the middle. And there's times where I have to have hard conversations with the companies and go, guys, this is necessary. Well, it needs to go.
And that's the advantage of having essentially an outside provider rather than someone full-time working for the company, because again, you would never say that your allegiance is to the company.
Right. But
you do tend to side with the hand that's feeding you.
Most definitely, yeah.
Or it could happen, I guess. It could happen. Not saying that's always what happens, but having a neutral party is definitely.
Most definitely. And I think that has been very beneficial to us.
Yeah.
Again, a large percentage of the injuries that we have called into our call center, they're just not emergencies to where they need clinical intervention. Now, I will tell you 100% of the time, we give the patients or the employees the option of going to a clinic. We have to.
Sure.
You have to always say, if you'd like to go to a clinic, we'll get it set up 100% of the time. But I think that when you have a licensed clinician on the other end, I think they're a little bit more agreeable to just knowing that you're paying attention to them, that you're going to be there. They can call me anytime, day or night. If it gets worse, they need to go to the ER, just have them call me later and we'll set it up to where they can go directly into the ER. And even if they go into the ER, they just call us from the ER and we'll just manage it from there. So
just super nice,
however
you do it.
Yeah, the employee always has full control of what they do. And there are panel states, they're like Tennessee's a 3. You have to offer them a panel of 3 providers to go to. And all those states are a little different. We're in about 25 states right now. And so we have to understand the rules for each state and what we need to offer them.
Are you able to share data on what kind of injuries happen on construction sites? Because if
that would be something for the companies, I think they would be able to, because it's.
But vaguely speaking, I think slips, trips, and falls are number 1.
Depending on the company, and it depends on the season of the year.
I see.
Obviously,
when it's colder,
probably the warmer times, especially when you're talking about heavy equipment. If you're talking about moving land, really, really taking land down.
Yeah.
Bee stings, tick bites. Yeah. But those are things that are grossly not reported.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So things that are reported, I would probably say slips, trips, and falls. You're walking on ungraded ground.
Yeah.
And you have someone that twists their ankle. Now, I will tell you that we've been completely able to eradicate ankle sprains in companies that will mandate lace-up boots.
Really?
Yeah.
So lace-up.
Yeah, instead of slip-ons because you don't have any support.
No kidding.
Right. So when you have a slip-on boot and you go in ungraded ground, you don't have any support of the ankle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
your ankle
so
just
if you
rolling
have
around.
high, 3-4 inches above the ankle,
interesting
lace-up boots, we've been able to almost completely eradicate significant ankle injuries.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm on wild terrain all the time, and I'm very strong because I'm working out every day. But I'm on crazy terrain, and this is when I start to get a little frustrated with the safety people because it's like, you can kick rocks. I know what kind of terrain I'm good with.
Sure.
I'm strong. I am just fine being over here.
Sure.
And I know you have your standard policy for everybody, but it's like, I'm not 100 pounds overweight. Like I'm capable of doing this.
Yeah.
And not that I'm just trying to go anywhere, but it's like, I've never had an issue because I've always had lace up area boots. No problem. Never. And I mean, I've gotten in some sticky situations, but still you've got that boot hugging your ankle. You're good to go.
Any significant injury that I've seen through my company that has come from an ankle has been kind of because of a slip-on boot.
Wow. But this is the funny thing about safety rules is a lot of them are just made up. I'll go to some places, they require slip-on. They won't allow you to have laces because they'll say, well, the lace could get caught in something. And so that's unsafe. You can't have laces. It's just like
I've never had one of those. I've never had one incident where a lace has caused some kind of injury. I've never had one.
Yeah.
Thousands of calls. I've never had one.
But I've seen both. I've seen no slip-ons.
Yeah.
And I've seen no lace boots.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what?
Yeah, I have some companies that went completely, and they'll provide one pair of boots but they have to be, and they actually have safety monitors. The safety professionals will go and check, and if they see someone with lace or with slip-on boots on their site, they'll call me and they'll say, I have a waiver, and I'm like, well, I didn't approve a waiver.
Yeah,
like we didn't approve any waiver. We don't approve waivers. Occasionally, you might have somebody that has a foot issue, but no.
This is the kind of stuff I like, though. Practical. Hey, because we've learned X, Y, Z, you're better off with a lace-up boot because it supports your ankles. And hey, you don't want to be out with a rolled ankle for 2 weeks, not able to support your family. Like this is critical stuff. You want to be at work. Like it's in their best interest to be healthy and able to work. Typically. Yeah,
and then you've got restricted time, and the amount of days away of restricted time that you have, your dart's going to go up significantly with a significant fracture or a significant high ankle sprain. So it's been the little things that you learn, the little nuggets that you learn from doing this job. It's really pretty impressive, the things that we can do for people. Yeah.
So sprains is a big one, I would think. Hand lacerations, maybe. Or
maybe for
damage to hands.
Maybe for like we have some high risk tree vegetation people that might have a little bit more in the hand, but they have a lot. They have a lot of safety equipment that they use.
Yeah.
Most of them are still. I mean, because they're hiking into these places. They're going to right of ways and marking these trees. The utility foresters or get into a place where they get into really crazy terrain. Where they might have knees. Knees are probably one of those things that are probably one of those things. Shoulders,
back injuries, maybe
some back injuries. Yeah, I mean a decent amount of back injuries just from twisting or getting out. I think the other part that's important, for us to talk about is just like how do we case manage something from, like, say there's someone that I have an individual that hurt their knee, but the mechanism of injury is really important. So when we do an investigation of an injury, we look at, pictures, we do videos, we do reenactments, and they tell us the direct things that happened. And we have somebody that just gets in and out of their piece of equipment like they do normally any day, and they tweak their knee a little bit because they just landed wrong. Okay, it's a little bit of a knee sprain. We can take care of that.
Yeah.
But then when we get to a point where it doesn't get better, and we work with local clinics and maybe get an MRI early, we see that there's a lot of degenerative stuff that's in there that's chronic.
Sure.
And so if you wouldn't get that, if you wouldn't get that so quickly, it would really change the way you approach it.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone that has a knee injury that has a lot of chronicity in it, you have to think, is this a significant exacerbation? Was the mechanism of injury, did it cause a significant exacerbation?
Yeah.
Or is it just a minor exacerbation of a pre-existing mess?
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on in there. Changes the way you actually document things.
Well, and this starts to get into climbing into equipment, in and out of equipment, I know is a big area of concern. And
that post you had the other day with that,
the man basket,
that little lift,
it just drives people nuts because they're like, so soft. You can't just climb up into a dozer. But it's like, but I'm looking at you guys, and you guys are all broken and complaining about your back pain, your knee pain, and how messed up your body is. And something comes along that could prevent you having to get in and out of an icy dozer every day when it's minus 15. I'm going to take that, seeing how broken you are. I don't want to be you.
We see it with cable companies, electrical companies. They're not climbing up ladders anymore. They're using baskets.
Yeah, baskets are big now.
They're using real.
Yeah, and then this goes to the proactive side, because this is something that's always confused me a little bit. It's like, I think most construction companies rely on any company does, but construction companies especially rely on human bodies to do work.
Most definitely, yeah.
And the health of these human bodies to do work. It is no different than a sports team.
It's tough.
It's no different than a sports team. And yeah, sports teams high dollar, so they have more to spend on health and wellness. But every one of those players is an asset, and it is in the best interest of the business to maintain that asset the best they can.
Yeah.
That is purely how it's looked at.
Yeah.
And I think if construction companies really thought like this, everybody would be a lot better off, because ironically, you go to job sites and it's not the healthiest place to be.
Yes.
There's a lot of overweight folks. There's a lot of people.
Well, they're working 12, 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
7 days a week.
I don't fault them at all.
They're grabbing what I see is people that have, some sort of chest discomfort or something like that. What'd you eat for breakfast? I had a burrito from the convenience store.
Yes. Well,
it's just,
and it's like, so we're going to talk about how important 3 points of contact is. And it's like, I get it, but no. What I love is we're going to do stretch and flex.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to do stretch and flex. That is going to check the box. We're going to be good to go. But it's like, we're not going to say that maybe because someone's 100 pounds overweight, they're more at risk to injure their ankle or knee or joint. Like, no. Stretch and flex. It's like, come on. Really? Because we're going to stretch for 10 minutes in the morning in kind of in a half-ass way? Like, that's going to do it? We're not going to talk about everybody overweight ruining their joints? Like,
sure.
To me, it's like, and I know it's not that. I know it's so easy for me to sit in the stands and be like, well, why don't you guys do this? Why don't you do that? But I think the best companies are starting to think like this. How can we make our people healthier? How can we help our people?
What kind of incentives can we give them?
Yes. Yeah. How can we potentially provide food for them? Because they are out there for 12 hours, 16 hours. All right, we're going to provide lunch. How can we
think about the money you could save on the back end?
That's the thing. Like, they're healthier, they're more productive, company makes more money, has more money to spend on their people. Yeah. It all works together. No one loses.
Yeah, I agree.
No one loses. And so I love being around companies that are thinking not even just from like a how do we avoid injuries, but how do we really care for our people from a physical standpoint, because everybody wins when we do that.
And I think for the most part, the people that come and work with me are those people. Yeah. Like they want another, what is the next thing that I can give to my employees? What is the next area that what is the next level of care how much can I show that I care about these guys? Like, what are the things that I can do? It's not just the benefit to the company is secondary.
Yeah, well, a STRAC makes perfect sense to me, because it's like, they're just across the board. How do we care for our people better? How do we care for our people better?
They're phenomenal with that. Phillips and Jordan, same way.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think that's really the future, is how do we holistically care for people? And it's not just physical. And this is where I got into some alarming statistics, terrifying statistics this weekend. I just made a post about it today. So fatalities on job sites. It was like 13.5 for every 100,000 workers, I think in 2020 was the number. Suicides are estimated at 50 per 100,000. So 4 to 5 times the fatalities on job sites. And this is construction and extraction, is they've pulled the data out. So 5 times for suicides.
Wow.
Opioid overdose, 162 for every 100,000. 12 times work-related fatalities.
Wow.
Is the early data, which is terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying one of the big reasons for this and why construction and extraction is by a long shot the number one profession for opioid-related overdoses. By a long shot, beating out everybody else by a mile, is because of work-related injuries typically. And then you go and get a prescription for a painkiller, for an opioid, legally speaking.
Sure.
Prescription runs out. Prescriptions are going a little longer than they probably should sometimes. Prescriptions are getting stronger. It's been proven by data that they're getting stronger. The doctor doesn't really care because he has 5 minutes with you.
Yeah.
And so here's your prescription. You have back pain. Here you go. You go get addicted to these opioids.
Sure.
Prescription runs out. You can't go back and get it. So what do? You go buy pills from somebody else.
Sure.
They're cut with fentanyl. 1, 2, 6, you're dead.
Yep.
And that is terrifying. And seeing that data, I'd never seen it anywhere else. I've never heard it talked about. Never. Because before I think it was, well, they're just an addict. It's like they're like an addict is like lower class society. Like, of course. And you know, it's a real shame, but you know, we just have addicts. But now it's like normal people going and getting a prescription from the doctor, and 126 they're dead with 3 kids at home, which is just
devastating.
Devastating.
I agree completely.
And the root cause oftentimes is these basic injuries, and that it could be prevented with what you're talking about.
You know, you get to understand these workers. I mean, these workers that work in this field are some of the hardest workers I've ever seen.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Some of them incredibly simple in their thinking. I'm going to go work. I'm going to take care of my parent. But the other thing is that a lot of these workers are transient.
Yeah.
So they live hours, maybe even a flight away from home to where they don't get to go home. So the physical, not only the physical stresses, but the mental stressors. You know, you can think about alcoholism or drugs or whatever you want to say.
Smoking.
It's just something to cope with the pain of being alone.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's very important the companies understand this. And I think in some way most all do. But the ones that really care about providing those extra levels do things and try to find ways of meeting not just the physical, but the mental needs of their patients or of their employees. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and that's not even touching on alcoholism,
right?
Which is the most pervasive by a long shot. But I even asked I did a poll on my Instagram stories, and you know, they're typically seen by like 50,000 people. I think every story I put up, which is hilarious.
Fantastic.
Because it's all just dumb shit. But I put up a poll, and maybe like 1,000 people responded to it. You know, hey, do you smoke? Do you not smoke? And a majority of people don't smoke, but a lot of people do in construction. And then I asked, well, why do you smoke? Because everybody knows it's bad. Everybody knows that.
Sure.
It is by no means a secret. And number one was stress.
100%.
It just takes the edge off. It gives me a break from the nonstop relentless pressure.
I'd probably say close to 60% of the people that come through for pre-employment, I have a medical screening questionnaire, and the first question is smoking, and it's that.
Yeah, stress or breaks. Because if you smoke, you can take breaks. But if you don't smoke, you can't take breaks.
That's always been a funny thing for me, especially in a building area where people that are smokers get to take breaks and the other ones don't.
It's just one of those things. But it's like I'm not trying to just sit here and be like, well, that's fucking dumb. Like, why would you smoke nowadays? Like, of course smoking's bad for you. I'm trying to be, all right, people are still smoking. Why? Stress. I get it. That makes, if I can almost live a day in their life and understand, yes, if I were you living away from home, working 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, I probably would be smoking too. Like, that's stress.
I just can't imagine. Like, I would say that without the danger, the combat danger, it's similar to being deployed.
Yeah.
It's very similar to being deployed.
Yeah.
It's a hard place being deployed.
Sure.
I've been deployed 4 times, you know, and so it's like, I know it's incredibly stressful. And so, you know, one of the other programs that we do is a Fit for Work, you know, not just for injuries, but Fit for Work, where we have programs that check on their physical, their emotional, and their chemical well-beings. So, if any supervisor, say someone, for instance, let's say someone comes in and they are just not acting the same. Like we saw them on Saturday, they were good.
Yeah.
Right. Sunday was day off. Monday, day back. Something was just not right with this guy. He's angry. He's frustrated. He's short. Do I really want this guy to be in a piece of equipment with that type of going on? So what they do is they identify it. They call the med line, the OccuMed line, and we talk to them and say, hey man, what's going on? Yeah. And they talk to us and they'll say something like, I just found out my wife was cheating on me.
Sure.
Dude, the mental anguish.
Sure.
The not being able to leave and being stuck, you know, at this job because they can't go back and take care of business if they wanted to.
Yeah.
now they have to deal with these emotions, but now they have to put in 16 hours. Do we really want that person? So we say, are you fit for work? Are you fit for work to work that job? And so in that situation, whether it's an emotional issue, we might give them counseling, get them some counseling, let them take a day off, let them have a couple of days to go take care of business or something like that,
Yeah.
And then it goes for chemical too. If someone comes in and they're just not acting right, if they come in and Saturday they didn't have a limp, Sunday they're off, Monday they come in first thing they have a limp, and they're like, hey, what's going on? Oh, I was working on my car yesterday and I hurt my back. Well, do I really want them to be out there? Maybe I'm going to do some alternate duties. Maybe I'll let them work in the office or have them do something differently where they don't lose time or money. But we can we get them out there. And if they're a physical labor and they're slinging concrete or, doing some kind of hard physical labor, they're just making it worse. And then if we don't identify that early, in 3 days to a week, now we've got a work-related issue that we're not going to be able to identify outside of the fact that they said they heard it when they were shoveling.
Well, and that would be, again, the approach of a great company is, hey, maybe we can get you some light duty work because we know you still got to pay your bills and we don't want to place a financial burden on you and your family by pulling you out. This is
definitely.
And even that level of flexibility and understanding. And when I talk about flexibility because so many companies are so rigid. Like if you can't work, you are not worth anything to us. And again, they don't say that. It's just like the old school mentality, but those best in class companies they're caring about that whole individual and they're willing to maybe pay out a little bit of money up front to help that person.
For the value of the employee.
Yes, which then buys them so much grace future state. And that person's not going to be leaving for a $1 raise if they genuinely feel cared for. Yeah, 9 out of 10 people would not.
Definitely because they feel valued in such a way and their loyalty to you just increased.
Yes.
Greatly.
Yes.
Greatly.
Yes.
And so it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Companies like that. And thankfully, all the companies that I work with are like that. And so it's so enjoyable to work with companies that have that kind of mentality.
Have you ever seen U-Turn Health?
I have not.
We gotta I gotta link you up with U-Turn Health because they have it's an amazing program. It's kind of similar, but it's for you, but it's specific to addiction.
Oh, awesome!
And substance abuse. Yeah. And so all it is it's just 1-800 U-Turn. So I pay as an employer. We just signed up a few weeks ago. I pay a few $1,000s, just like a base fee to have U-Turn and have this service available to our people.
Yeah.
We tell our people, hey, if you're struggling with stress, anxiety, substance abuse, you call 1-800 U-Turn.
Awesome.
7 days a week. And this isn't just available to you, but this is available to your entire immediate family.
That's awesome.
So if your spouse
love that
is struggling or whoever, and maybe, you're struggling with substance abuse and then your spouse, they're struggling their own way because you're struggling with substance abuse.
Yeah.
It has an effect on everybody, the whole family. Everybody has access to this. Mm-hmm. They're able to talk with people as much as they want to through U-Turn. And then U-Turn just bills us monthly based on usage, doesn't say anything about it otherwise.
That's great.
It's
love it.
It's an amazing program.
Yeah.
And I think every company should offer
and
it.
See, that would be something that'd be great to add into your employee assistance program.
Yes.
Like anything that you do with, death, bereavement, struggle, alcoholism, anything like that, that would be a fantastic addition.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very complimentary to what you're doing.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Like their service is substance abuse primarily.
Especially these days and these times.
I grew up with alcoholism in the house.
Me too.
I've been around it my whole life. And dude, it sucks. It sucks so much. And to think just how many people are in that. But I mean, I could not find a single person that doesn't have some very personal experience with substance abuse of some sort. Everybody.
So many factors that affect that.
Yeah, but what you were saying too, like I've talked with my mom now, as I get older, my parents are divorced. And I just tell my mom, like, man, I don't want to get a divorce because I saw what you both went through.
Painful.
I want nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And she, it's like 15 years later and she's like, yeah, I'm still kind of messed up from it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I believe it. Like that, I can't even imagine. And then to have your spouse say, here's the papers, and then to show up on Sunday and show up to work on Monday?
Yeah.
No way in hell am I focused on anything, which is crazy. It's it hurts me to even think about all the people that are hurting that have to go to work on Monday.
Sure.
Despite whatever just went on Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
And act like nothing happened.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. It's tough.
Yeah, it's so tough. But I think what you're doing is awesome because I think it's...
Thanks, man.
I'm a huge advocate for people being healthy.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're healthy, it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Like life doesn't need to be harder than it is. And being overweight or whatever it is, and I keep referencing overweight, but it's like it's 100 different things that it could be. It just adds so much weight in general to life that doesn't need to be there.
Very complicating.
Yeah. It's like it's heavy enough. Like we don't need to make it heavier. But I also get that it's so easy to let things spiral out. Again, especially when you're working a 12-hour shift, 14-hour shift, 16-hour shift. You don't have time for anything else. If you're on a 16-hour schedule, which it's out there. Yeah. For sure out there.
Especially deadlines when you're behind because of weather or something like that. You're
supposed to be sleeping 8 hours a night.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you're definitely not sleeping 8 hours a night when that's the case because you got a family. Oh, you got to drive home. Okay. When are you eating?
Yeah.
Like when are you doing anything else but working?
Yeah.
And then you turn around and do it all over again. A few hours sleep later, you're sleep deprived. And then you compound that weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months. And then you're away from home. Then you see your kids growing up on FaceTime.
I think it's the hardest job. It's the hardest job.
But it doesn't need to be as hard, I think is my point.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be. And
the companies can help to alleviate that.
I think it's on the companies.
Especially when the demands on the employees are so high from the companies. Yeah. The companies bear the burden.
Yeah. And there's a lot of companies with a victim mentality right now. Why don't people want to work for us? The best companies, best in class, the Hoopaws, the Stracks, the CW Matthews, they're like, no. We're going first. We're gonna do, and maybe we have never done this before. Maybe we've never had this medical service before, but we need this because it's going to make our people healthier. It's going to make their quality of life better. It's going to make our business better.
It's a win-win across the board for all parties involved. It's a win-win.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. How can people see what the heck you've got going on?
So I have a amazing website that was built out by some people that you know.
I actually didn't tee that up for that reason, but yes.
I'm okay with giving kudos.
Creative group did do your website.
It was fantastic. www.occumed1.com. It's has all of our information. You can request information. You can request a consultation. We do consultations that are specific to each company and their needs. We've got 6 or 7 different services that we offer. We offer them all collectively in a medical directorship program.
What would you, and that's for companies, what would you recommend to somebody that it's like, hey, I'm kind of struggling right now, like from a physical standpoint, but my company doesn't have anything. What kind of advice would you give to somebody?
Elaborate on that question a little bit more.
Like I been hurting for a little bit, but I just don't know where to go. Like I'm working away from home. My company doesn't really have a phone number, an OccuMed to call.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do in that situation?
You're just talking about the individual themselves.
Correct.
I mean, I would always be glad to talk to them if they wanted to, hook up with me on the internet, and I could at least help to direct them in some way.
Yeah.
I think a pastor, therapist, a family member that's really caring, that can give you some direction. I don't think it's ever wrong to go to your HR person in your company and request the employee assistance program number.
Sure.
Because most all companies should have that available to them to where they can at least get 2 or 3 counseling services for free.
Yeah. I talked to somebody last night. They're like, hey, because I try to be pretty open about it. Therapy.
Yeah.
I've been doing therapy consistently for like 5 years now.
Yeah. That's great.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I do it. I'm pretty busy. And so I can't really go into an office and make it consistent like that. So I just do it remotely.
Yeah, there's a lot of online services out there.
Well, and I mentioned that to him. Like, I just do it remote, maybe on average, probably once every 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, you can do that? I'm like,
yeah,
you
definitely.
can do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of great programs out there.
Yeah. And you can do it at night, on weekends. They're built around working, people that work.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of therapy these days. I think, one, it's much more accepted.
Yeah.
Two, it's much more available.
Mm-hmm.
And so, three, it's much more needed than it's ever been needed.
Yeah.
And so I think the availability that they've created through online services for therapy have been second to none. They're really good.
Yeah. 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 I've got to set you up with username. Do you post on LinkedIn much?
I do.
So you share some of the stuff?
Yeah, I do.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You need to share more. You need to share as much as you can, man.
This
is good stuff.
I don't have the mentality. I don't have the creativity. I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing.
No. You just have to talk about what you're doing, what you're learning. What are some common themes? Like there's a mountain of stuff that you could talk about that I think would help so many people. It would honestly get you a lot of business.
That's great. I would love that. I mean, I would love to do it just to help the people.
Yeah.
With my heart, man, I really want to help people. I want to be the best advocate for the individual and for the company. I think it's important. And I think with my military background, it gives me a little bit more of a command presence with dealing with both, because sometimes I have to say hard things to the patients. Sometimes I have to say hard things to the companies. And thankfully, I've been pretty fortunate to work with some really great companies.
Well, and I think your military background helps you from a relatability standpoint with construction folks.
Sure.
Too.
Yeah.
I think it gives you some street cred.
Hey, and earning that trust from those guys is not easy. Not easy
I have
at
spent
all.
6 years working on it, and I still have a long way to go.
Because a lot of times what they do is they look at us as something that's going to keep them from working.
Yeah.
And so that kind of goes along. So I was a flight surgeon as well in the Army. And so part of the job in the Army was to hold a standard of regulation for the individual, but also for the Army. And so we're the ones that understand the regulations that are specific to flyers, people that are in flight. And we're the ones that can take your flight status away.
I see.
So if you come to me with certain issues and maybe you've done some things on your own that you shouldn't have, then I'm the one that can take your flying ability away. So you usually are treated very well by the pilots. You're treated very well until something happens, and then it becomes now you're the enemy. So there's a fine line, and I think it's probably similar to safety people as well, people that are in safety positions, because they have to understand that they are the enforcers of guidelines and protocols.
Yeah.
But they also have to be personable enough to earn the trust from the individual to where you're going to do what's best, and they know that you're caring.
And best safety people, they're caring. If you go in with an enforcing mentality, which is a lot of safety people, no one will ever respect you. You are worthless.
And if you don't have that respect,
yes,
good luck.
Yeah, but if you really care about people can pick up on that. You can do wonders.
Yeah, some of the best safety guys that I've met, even some of the senior guys that I know from the different companies I have, they're some of the most compassionate, genuine people that I've ever met, and they've added to me. And I think combination of us working together and knowing that, hey, what is a way that we can help this person to where it doesn't affect them? We work closely together. How can we go ahead and take care of this person in this way? How can we make sure if someone's injured, can we pay for their family's flight or their housing or something like that? How can we make the burden not so hard?
Sure.
And the best ones have all been like, do it, let's do it. Let's take care of the whole family. That's great. Good stuff.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed this.
Me too, man.
Yeah.
Me too. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you coming by.
Yeah. Maybe do it again sometime.
I hope so. Good stuff.